The BBC, the mega floods are coming to California. The New York Times, Asia's heat wave scorches hundreds of millions. The Economist, climate change is coming for your home. And The Guardian, the children won't be able to survive. These are all the recent titles from my feed, from international syndicates talking about our very near and very catastrophic future. Being an intermittent reader, and as someone with a sense of self-righteousness about our societies, seeing such pessimistic titles and the dystopian world they illustrate as ours takes something away from me. And I'm not alone in thinking that. It's a phenomenon that's become a habit for recent generations of youth, who've ironically been educated with a sense of justice and universal morality, but through polarizing ideologies and plummeting confidence about the institutions that govern our very lives, have lost faith in these virtues. Whether through the miscarriages of justice or the negligence of what we intuitively feel as right, the world is seemingly doomed. Believing so, many have resorted to doomerism, throwing away their political and sovereign capabilities and ultimately driving the mobbification of our societies. So, let's first examine our information diet, hyperbolize our worries of the world, and then dissect how the pessimist attitude affects us as individuals, as members of the international community, before finally exploring how we might steer ourselves towards hope. In 2018, The Guardian published an article titled, "We Have 12 Years to Limit Climate Change Catastrophe, Warns UN." Other media outlets followed suit in publishing the UN's findings, but they reframed the title just a little bit. One article read, "12 years to save planet Earth," and another read, "Only a decade left." Even though the initial UN report warned of a moderate rise in temperature, through a strange game of telephone, media outlets blasted out hyperbolic messages of apocalyptic proportions into the internet, for people such as myself to read during my morning Instagram scroll. The media game of telephone works like this. Anytime a study is published by a reputable source, such as the Pew Research Center, that study is naturally interpreted by the publication with a slight negative bias, because publications generally emphasize the problems first. That article is then squeezed into a bite-sized bombastic headline such as "How chemical pollution is suffocating the sea," which is then posted on mass platforms like Reddit. Then an innocent, media-aware screenreader like me, riding the bus to school, reads the headline, starting their morning with a nice pinch of doomerism. This game of telephone is played to turn primary sources into articles, into hyperbolic headlines, into doomer Reddit posts for the youth to perpetually consume. And since headlines are what most of us read these days, the bite-sized pills of doom become the entirety of our media diet. The scope of this negativity cycle was better shown in a recent global study on climate anxiety of the youth. More than 50% reported each of the following emotions: sadness, anxiety, anger, powerlessness, helplessness, and guilt. More than 45% of the respondents said their feelings about climate change negatively affected their daily life and functioning. These findings unveil the fact that the climate crisis is becoming a crisis of teenage mental health. As the Yale program on climate change communication stipulates, these negative emotions hinder an individual's capability to enact change. People avoid the discussion about societal issues they feel negatively towards, such as environmental losses, because they worry that such talk will only worry them more. Margaret Clegg Solomon, a former clinical psychologist, coins the situation as a delusion of normalcy. According to her, pessimism facilitates a sense of helplessness, which actively degrades people, whilst also paralyzing their course of action. By doing so, the youth not only continue to poison themselves, but drive the social movements and much needed support, making the issues chronic. The origin of this problem lies in the incentive structures of bad journalism, social media, and human tendency. Sociologists have repeatedly observed that humans love pessimist content through what is known as the negativity bias. It comes across as no surprise that multiple studies cite that we favor negative news over the positive when communicating information. The heightened sensitivity translates into customers engaging more with articles painted in a dark light. Since journalists and algorithms which sustain the media landscape are incentivized to print stories that drive attention, the pessimism hamster wheel continues to churn out stories spelling doom. So then, how can we cling on to our hope? We can first definitely start by advocating for higher standards in our readables. This could look like supporting or spreading awareness of institutions that prioritize transparency. Efforts for greater transparency and higher work ethic in both journalism and media creation will no doubt better the knowledge we absorb. And though we have no journalists, no Tucker Carlson in the room, we can't stop there. Because doomerism essentially arises from not only the externals, but how we as independent individuals react, perceive, act on information. We have to change. To be fair, doomerism is hard to reject because of its bare truths. Even with transparent media practices, it is fair to assume that without action, mega floods and the heat waves and the climate change could come, hurting countless people. Yet, in getting to that conclusion, people often ignore that the world is a half-filled cup. They ignore that incredible progress has been made in the climate technology sector. They ignore that the hole in the ozone layer has been patched up. They ignore that the child mortality rate has halved worldwide in less than a century. The only way to surely not walk into the trap of doom, to be aware of our power and potential as proactive individuals, awareness of our cognitive functions can reframe news from being sensationalist, reframe our emotional response of apocalyptic news as an overreaction, take into view the current state of the world and look further for hope, not just reminisce on the past and sigh, but use it as a cornerstone for future successes. Awareness of our brain's tendencies is the path of embracing both positivity and negativity as forces for change. Maybe then we can read the news from some real inspiration. Thank you.